Request all candidates to switch off your video. Please don't turn on your video. All right, so welcome everybody to the research admission session. So am I audible?
Yes, Deepak, you're audible. Go ahead.
Yeah. So welcome to the research admission session. So I am Professor Deepak Subramani. I'm with the CDS department. I'm an assistant professor at the Computational and Data Sciences department. And with me today we have Professor Shashikumar Ganeshan and Professor Yogesh Simhan, who will be sharing with you details about the CDS department and what it means to take a research career, right? So what it means to do a research, how to launch your research career as a researcher, and I will also tell you about the admission process, what the next few weeks of admission, right? So what all activities are there? I will talk to you about that. So first I invite Professor Shashikumar Ganeshan to briefly tell us about the CDS department. He is the chair of the Department of Computational and Data Sciences. So over to you, Shashi.
Yeah, thanks, Deepak. Good evening to all. So first of all, let me congratulate you for getting shortlisted for the CDS research admissions. So this year we have received more than 1,000 applications for research, out of which we have shortlisted the less than 300 applications for research admissions. So all the details, how to get into it, what are the admission process, and I think Professor Deepak will be explaining you, including the entrance or the written component, exam component as well, right? So to just give a brief overview of the department, so CDS Computational Data Science Department is one of the youngest department in the institute, and in fact, when we have created this department, so we were the first department in India, especially for the full-fledged computational data science department. So right now, you can have like almost all engineering colleges, private institutions, including several government institutions, are having the computational and data science or data science departments or AI programs and so on. But when we launched way back in 2019, 2015 or so we were the first department, full-fledged department for computational data science. So when we talk about the computational data science, we can highly on a very high level, you can group it into three categories. One, for example, the computational science, and the two, the research activities of the department can be classified into three categories. One, computational science, and the two, the data systems and data science. For example, the systems I talk more about, including the compiler and also the database and so on, and as well as the data engineering. So one can think about it. And the third, I would say it's the overlap between the systems and the data science. For example, NLP, machine learning, video analytics, medical imaging, right? These are the topics that are most relevant to the application of data science, right? So these are the primary areas of the department. So the department comes under the interdisciplinary science, which means the faculty from diverse background, starting from physics, maths, mechanical engineering, computer science, of course, and also the ECE, right? So vast majority of background from the engineering field as well as the science field. So that's the reason why we were able to admit also students from a different background. So in addition, we are going to get two more new faculty, and those two labs are also listed in the research admission brochures. So I suggest you to go through the list of labs or the research group that admit research students this year and do some homework, and then come up with some preparation. Yes, decide which lab you want to be, what kind of research you want to work on, right? So these are the things you should look into it. So because it's a research is not a course program, to say that when you join, it is not like a fixed curriculum you complete and get the degree. but the research is more about the student driven, which means you have to come up with ideas. You have to come up with your own interest, right? What excites you, what fascinating you, right? These are the topics, these are the areas you should identify and look at the faculty profiles and the research problems, what they are solving, right? So do all this homework before coming to even to the interviews, so that you will be able to target or focused on a particular lab or 2 labs or 3 labs, right? Depends on your the preference, right? So with this, just a brief overview, and here we will be having a detailed session on, once you join, we will be having more detailed session on the department and the research activities of different faculty members. But for the research admissions, I see that this is more than enough. You should be able to get into the admissions, especially clear the interviews. So there are 2 components. One is the written and the oral interview. The complete process Deepak will be explaining. Okay. So with this, I once again welcome you all and wish you all the best to clear the written test and as well as the research interviews. Deepak, over to you. Deepak, you are muted.
Yes, thank you, Shashi. Thank you for the introduction of the department. So I also played the video of the CDS department so that all the participants can get a view. Right, so it is also available on YouTube, right? So if you search for computational data science department, right, so you get the video of the department and the facilities that are there in the department. Next, I invite Professor Yogesh Simhan to discuss about research, doing research, and what it means, right? So over to you, Yogesh.
Sure, Deepak. Thanks a lot. So, just give me one moment. Let me know if you can share so viewers can see my screen. Okay, can you confirm if you can see my screen?
Yes, Yogesh, you can go ahead. We can see your screen.
Okay, great. So thanks, Deepak. Thanks, Shashi. So I'm just going to keep this sort of interactive and leave enough time for questions. And this is more to get you familiar with what does research mean and what does getting a research degree at CDS mean, right? So is this even that, I mean, you already applied, you've been shortlisted to the interviews and so on. But just to get a sense of what does research mean and also what does a PhD versus a master's mean and so on, right? So, so I will sort of give some time for Q&A. So feel free to sort of have a set of questions or put that in the chat window if you have access to that, and ask me if I haven't addressed that, right? First up, what is research, right? Some of you might have applied to a research program because it sounds very cool. R&D lab sounds very cool. Research, doing research might help you become a scientist and all that. So all of that is true, but research at the end of the day is, if you look at it from a definition perspective or a process perspective, it's just a systematic inquiry, right, into some discipline. Right? So it's essentially being thorough, rigorous, and in-depth, right, about some problem or some field, right, that you've picked up. Right? And one of the key ideas over here is the systematic part. That's really the scientific part. Right? Some of you or many of you might have in even your high school, right, might have done the things like aim, apparatus, procedure, all those things for doing an experiment. Right? So if you think about an experiment that you conduct in your school or your college, right, it has a very proper method to it. Right? So there are certain steps that you follow, and the reason that you do it is because you have to be systematic. Right? Otherwise, whatever conclusion that you draw might be based on a faulty process or a faulty data and so on. So that's why when you talk about research and science go hand in hand, because in order to do science, you do research, you have to be rigorous, thorough in what you do. Right? That's really what you would learn in a research degree, which typical course degree wouldn't necessarily give you. Right? And what does it mean to do research? And this doesn't matter if you're doing a research as a student at IISc or as some faculty 10 years down the line, or as a researcher in some research lab or some industry lab or a national lab down the line. So you need to sort of be aware of the state of the art. Right? You must be an expert in that particular area. Right? And that's what we train you for as part of a research degree at CDS. And that helps you understand what are some of the gaps in that space, right? It's in the conceptual gaps, approaches or algorithms that might be lacking certain capabilities, systems that might actually have to be built, hardware or software systems or even applications, right? But the key part is that once you know everything there is to know about a certain area, then you can start saying that, hey, this doesn't work properly, right? So maybe there's a way to improve upon that. Right? And then you sort of develop new hypotheses that you might want to test, saying that, hey, if I tried something different, right, will it work or not, right? If I try a new algorithm or a new technique, will this work better, right? So that's really the invention part of the development part, right? But in order to sort of invent or develop, you need to know what is the gap, right? So that's why you go from the gap to developing something. And this might be where a lot of the intellectual part might come in, right? So the identifying the gap and developing new techniques is where a lot of the thinking and so on. But followed by that is the evaluation, right? So this gets back to how do you know that what you have developed works, right? Works correctly, works better, right? And this might require
Yogesh, you got muted. I don't know how.
Someone muted. He said I got a pop-up. Okay, I don't know how far you missed it, but essentially, sort of evaluation is a key aspect of this, and you need to be able to ensure that whatever techniques you've invented are actually correct, right? And then they are actually better than some kind of a baseline or alternative that might already be there, right? So, and that sort of goes back to the gap, right? So the gap might be that, hey, as an existing algorithm is not fast enough, right? Or an existing method doesn't give you enough accuracy, right? And now after developing a technique, you would actually evaluate it and say, hey, am I doing better, right? Am I correct and am I doing better, right? And then you sort of take all of this. So effectively, this effectively becomes your portfolio that you put together. You sort of have a problem, solution, evaluation, and this is written up in a sort of proper technical manner as a report, which you then sort of submit to a journal or a conference. And there you have worldwide experts who actually review this, what you have submitted to them, and they say, yes, this passes muster, this is rigorous, this is clean, this is advances the state of the art, it contributes to science, and it gets accepted. And then as a result of following this process, you might have found new ideas, right, which you didn't have time to explore because you need to do one thing at a time. But then you have a chance to go back and identify new problems that you encountered and keep repeating this, right? So at the end of the day, research is about this following this life cycle, right? And as new sort of problems come, new domains come up, you might sort of start following them. But at the end of the day, you have a core grounding in some research area, and you keep branching out from that as you progress forward, right? So with that sort of basics, what does a research degree at IISc mean? And some of this might be covered by Deepak as well in terms of prerequisites and so on. But IISc has two types of research degrees. One is a PhD degree, other is a master's by research degree. And a PhD degree is open both to students with a bachelor's, BTech degree, or to students with a master's degree. So even if you have a bachelor's, you can very well apply to a PhD degree at IISc, right? So if you have a bachelor's degree, then the typical duration for completion of a PhD degree might be about 4 to 5 years, and you take 6 courses as part of your research training, right? That's 6 courses, and the rest of the time would be spent in your dissertation. While you come into the master's degree, then you have to take fewer courses, which means that you have to spend fewer time in the PhD program, and you sort of spend probably a comparable amount of time on your research itself, right? The M.Tech degree is a much more shorter version, right? It's just like a 2-year duration, which you can come in with a bachelor's. And here you take 2 courses and you spend about 1.5 years of research training. So in a sense, it's almost like a light version of a PhD. It's almost like spending the first 2 years of a PhD in doing a master's, but there are also other subtle differences which I'll briefly talk about. So these are the 2 pathways for you as part of the research program. If you look at a sort of typical PhD life cycle at IISc, you might spend the first year finishing what are called your training program, your research training program. This might be 3 courses if you already have a master's. If you have a bachelor's, you will do 6 courses. And you'll also start spending years 1 and 2, like understanding the state of the art, right? So getting to become an expert in a particular area. And reading a lot of these papers, articles, and so on, scientific reports and such, will help you, along with inputs from your advisor, obviously, identify a research topic that is of interest, right? And then you sort of do some preliminary work in that area. And then at the end of year 2, you'll go through something called a comprehensive exam, right? And what this will do is that will test how well you did in your courses in terms of your ability to have learned sort of something meaningful. You'll have a viva voce on that. And you'll also be asked to present some work on what research idea that you've come up with. So the idea, the key goal of this comprehensive exam is to make sure that you're prepared to do research in this area. Right? So that establishes that, hey, you have the prior training, you've got the skills, you've got the course skills, you've got the literature review, you have an interesting problem to solve, you've done some preliminary work. Now, full steam ahead, right? Go ahead and finish up your research, right? And the next, anywhere from sort of 2 or 3 years is spent in actually carrying out full-fledged research, right? It might be in 2 or 3 problems that you identify, and you keep doing that. You sort of repeat the same cycle that I talked about earlier on over this 3-year period. And at the end of the day, you have sort of maybe have 4 or 5 publications, maybe 3 or 4 areas that you made an impact in. So you write it all up into a dissertation, and then you sort of submit it for evaluation, and then you have a dissertation defense. So all of this typically takes about 5 years, right? And you could always do it in as early as 3 years also, if you really accelerate the process. But 4 to 5 years is a typical life cycle if you come in with a bachelor's, or 3 to 4 years if you come in with a master's. Now, you might have a bunch of questions, and I'll try to sort of answer some of them over here, right? So many of you might not have done research previously, right? So when I joined for my PhD, I'd never done research at all, right? So, but that's perfectly fine, right? So there's always a starting point. And at IISc, we do ensure that everyone who joins get trained for doing research. You don't have to have done research. In fact, I would actually say if you've done research elsewhere, you still might need to actually unlearn and relearn certain things at IISc, because at IISc we have a much higher standard, right, at various aspects of research. So you need to be retrained to end up with a global standard, research standard that IISc has. Right? So, so coming in with as a blank slate is perfectly fine from a research perspective. And a mix of taking these research training sort of coursework in the first year, along with a lot of experience that you will get, right, with your advisor's lab, right? Because a lot of research is about sort of collaborating with your advisors, with your other peers in your lab, and so on. So it's much more of an interactive learning. It's not about sort of just going and doing courses, right? It's learning by doing, learning by sort of conversing, discussions, and so on. So it's really the research group that sort of trains you, right, in things beyond what you learn in coursework, along with your own reading of literature and so on. Right? So it's like an immersive learning that you get as part of a research program. Right? But at the same time, you can't come in saying that, hey, I have no research and I have poor foundations as well, right? That won't quite work. So you need to be strong in your undergraduate coursework and all the fundamentals, right? It's less about having scored high marks in your undergraduate, but more having a good grasp of what you've learned in your undergraduate. That's what we really look for, right? Because that's a good foundation on which you can build upon. Good CGPAs don't count, right? If you didn't understand what really went on behind the various concepts. And if you look at the admissions process, which Deepak will talk about, there again, that's what we're really trying to get to, right? So not just have you score high, but you really understand the subject. So another question that you might have is, well, there are a lot of course degrees offered at IISc. M.Tech at CDS itself is a very popular course, as Sashi mentioned. So you might be wondering, hey, maybe I should just do a course degree and leave it at that, right? Maybe that might be easier, right? But one thing I would actually say is, just as you don't go to a sort of dosa shop and order a pizza, you can always do that in India. In India, every restaurant is a multi-cuisine restaurant, so you can go to a dosa shop and you might find burger in the cuisine. Right? But at IISc, our claim to glory, not just in India but worldwide, is that we are the #1 research institution, right, in India, and in many metrics we are the top university worldwide. So if you're coming to IISc, right, the biggest offering that we have to give you, right, the one that we are sort of world famous for, is really a research program, right? So that's one of the reasons why you should strongly consider the research program, a PhD program at IISc, because that unquestionably is world class, right? So what's the difference between a research program and a course program? So the key focus of a research program, right, is that you gain a lot of sort of high-end skills, right, in a specific research area, right? And the research area, I mean, it might be data science, computational science, computer systems, big data platforms, IoT, you name it, you could sort of pick an area and even pick a problem within that area, right? It's going to be specialized, but in that you'll really get a lot of depth, right? You can always pick up breadth as well. There's no sort of nothing prevents you from doing additional courses to get your breadth, right? But it's not mandatory, right? So what is mandatory that you are, at the time you get a degree, you become an expert in a specific area. And sort of that's really what you get from the research process, right? The other interesting bit is that though a PhD takes longer than a master's by coursework, you actually have to do fewer courses, right? If you have a bachelor's when you join a PhD, you might do 6 courses. If you have a master's when you join a PhD, you might do about 3 courses. But that's about it. The coursework that you have to take is very minimal. Compared to, for example, if you do an M.Tech at CDS, you have to take approximately 10 courses, right? And you might do a 6 months to 1 year dissertation, right? Project work, and you end up with it. But the M.Tech program is primarily designed for sort of getting doing another round of coursework so that you get a breadth of skills and maybe a little bit of depth as well, and maybe getting you just ready for placements, right? So that might sort of be the primary outcome of the M.Tech course program, right? But for a sort of PhD or even an M.Tech by research program, you actually get a lot of depth in specific areas, and that sort of really prepares you for a host of downstream careers, right? Compared to just an M.Tech course degree, right? The other benefit is that the courses that you can take as part of your research program are way more flexible than what you might take in a course-based program. In a course-based program, you have a set of core courses you have to take, you have a set of soft course courses you have to take, and then you have a set of electives, right? But in a research program, whether a master's or a PhD, really, the courses that you take are completely up to you and your advisor. Right? So having fewer courses and more flexible courses also allows you to spend more time getting trained for doing research in your area of interest, and also more time to actually do research rather than just keep doing coursework, right? So the other benefit of picking a research program is that you get more time to work on a research topic that really interests you, right? For a course program, you do get to do a project work, but that's typically much more narrower in scope. It's typically something the lab is already working on, so you get handed one piece of a larger problem, and you work on that, you make some contribution, and you sort of move on with your degree, right? But in a research program, you get sort of more sort of options in terms of the problem that you work on, because you have more time to work on that, right? Students who are in the sort of M.Tech research or the PhD program also work with research lab, right, or an advisor, pretty much from day one, right? Within the first sort of couple of months, you are working with a research lab. You have the benefits of collaborating with students in the research lab who might sort of be mentoring you. You get to use the various lab facilities that might be there besides what's there in the department, right? So in that sense, you sort of, it's almost like getting into joining a family, right? So that's what a research program is about, right? You're not just joining the department, you're actually joining a family within the department, and the family is there. Sort of, these are your well-wishers. They'll work with you from day one to make sure that you're successful in your research. And furthermore, as we'll talk, the career options that you have after the research degree are more sort of, you have more options, right? And it's not just options within India, but even options outside India are also plentiful, right? If you get a research degree, right? So you might also be wondering between the research degrees, you got a PhD versus a master's in research, which one is right for you, right? I would say both do train you for research, right? In both cases, you have fewer coursework, more time spent on research. So doesn't matter which one you choose, you are definitely going to be trained much more rigorously in specific areas, and you'll learn the process. It's not just about sticking to that area. I mean, the problems I work on today, the research problems I work on today, are very different from the research problems I worked on as a PhD student, right, for my dissertation, right? They're broadly in the same area, but you're not stuck to that area for the rest of your life. But what you get out of the research program is the ability to do research. That's what you learn from the 5 years that you might spend or 3 years that you might spend at IISc. It's how to do research, right? And how to gain expertise in the area. After that, if you want to sort of switch to a sort of allied area, you can always do that, right? It's just a question of investing a bit more time, but you know how to do it. You have the process nailed down, right? Between a master's and a PhD by research, the difference is the type of topic that you choose and the amount of time that you spend, right? With a master's by research, you get a year and a half to do research. A year and a half is still a modest amount of time to have a big research impact. On the other hand, at the PhD, you have about 3 to 4 years to do sort of exclusive research, which means you can pick problems that have a long-term impact, right? That can be more impactful. That might have a social impact, a technical impact, a scientific impact, and so on. So you can afford to sort of take on big challenges and sort of work on them incrementally. It's not like you spend the entire 4 years working on one narrow problem, right? You typically sort of do it layers at a time. You sort of spread it out and you get incremental results, right? But at the end of the day, you've done a body of work, right? That you can be proud of. And people who look at your dissertation will say, hey, now that person is an expert in this area. They've done some substantial work in this area. So I need to hire them, right? Or I need to talk to them about specific work, right? And as a PhD student, you also get a bit more flexibility, the topics that you work on, because as an advisor, if there's a master's by research student who has maybe a year and a half of research, I don't want them to sort of take on very challenging problems, because if they don't make sufficient progress, right, they would have done a weak dissertation, right? So you always sort of tend to be a bit more conservative with the topics for a master's student, but you give more freedom to a PhD student. The other flip side is that, let's say you sort of want to do a PhD, you sort of started doing a master's by research and you want to do a PhD, right? And so if you end up finishing a master's and then do a PhD, right? So doing them separately can very well take you 2 years for your master's, another 4 to 5 years for a PhD. It will be about 7 years or so. But if you sort of start doing a PhD after your bachelor's, right? Now you can complete it in 4 to 5 years. So that's effectively like 2 years that they're saving in your academic career by opting for a direct PhD. So that's something to think about as well. Right? At the same time, I say that, hey, I mean, that seems very 4 to 5 years is a lot of commitment. Maybe I start doing research, then I realize that, well, I don't like research, or maybe I don't like research in this particular lab. Maybe I want to say, like, what do I do, right? So maybe so a PhD is not for you once you start doing that. It's not like no one's going to be forcing you to complete a PhD, right? If everyone sort of acknowledges that what you've opted for may not be the best for you. So we do understand that circumstances might change, or your interest might change, and so on. So IISc does have an exit option for students who are in the PhD program to leave with a master's, right? As long as you complete the master's degree requirement. So after 2 years, when I mentioned before, you have a comprehensive exam after 2 years, right? So if at the time of your comprehensive, you and the committee realize that, hey, maybe a PhD is not the right program for you, and you've finished enough work for picking up a master's degree, including the coursework, then you can sort of leave with a master's degree. And as far as your degree is concerned, your transcript is concerned, it will sort of say that you are a master's student, right? It won't say that, hey, you're a PhD student, you're downgraded and all this. As far as the rest of the world is concerned, you were a master's student from day one and you left with a master's degree, right? So in that sense, we try to mitigate the risk in case, right, students choose a master's, PhD, but for whatever reason, want to leave with a master's. Right, so let's quickly go through a couple of questions. We are already running sort of on the mark. So what can you do after your PhD, right? So here the options are plentiful, right? So they start from something as basic as saying that, hey, you could get the same job that you could get after a master's coursework degree, that would still be available to you, right? Except with maybe a little bit more experience that you have, right? So it's not like getting a PhD does not eliminate you from any options that you would have with a master's, but that's not really why you're doing a PhD, right? So after a PhD, you can very well join a research lab in a company, right? You could join all the top companies, be it Google or Microsoft or IBM or Amazon or whichever companies that you might have targeted, right? All of them have strong research programs. And to join a research lab in these companies, you do need a PhD degree. They're not going to take you with a master's degree. They might have some few positions with a master's degree, that's mostly for just coding and development, not necessarily for doing sort of research, right? So that's a big plus. The other obvious options, after PhD, you can always become a faculty, right? You can say that, hey, I like what faculty at IISc do. I want to do that for the rest of my life. That's how it was for me, right? I saw I joined a research lab for a PhD. I said, okay, I would like to be my advisor for the rest of my life, right? I want to sort of have freedom in defining my own problem. I would have a group of students that I can mentor and so on. I want sort of to have a steady paycheck. I want the opportunity for working on cutting edge problems without anyone telling me what to do, right? So being a faculty is a bit like I keep telling it's a bit like running a startup, but having a monthly paycheck, right? There's no financial risk, but you get to work on any problem that you want, right? That you can pick and choose, right? So becoming a faculty is obviously an option, and you can also open up your horizons beyond just working within India, right? So if you have a PhD, right, meaning, and especially a PhD from IISc, right, institutions around the world, right, would be happy to sort of hire you as a postdoc, or once you have a bit of experience, even hire you as a faculty, right? So doing a PhD at IISc is sort of opens doors that would otherwise not be open, right? So doing that after just a master's degree might be a bit more challenging, right? But let's say you wanted to do a master's by this, like want to do a master's in India, then do a PhD. Even though doing a master's by research, especially since it has a research component, also makes it easier for you to potentially do a PhD abroad after a master's by research compared to just doing a master's by coursework, right? So all these options are on the table after a PhD degree, right? So one other question that used to sort of be asked earlier on, which is less relevant right now, is that, well, you have to spend 5 years, and if you spend maybe 2 years getting a master's and then you went out to the industry, you would actually get a nice paycheck, right? That you could sort of splurge on, right? But so the good news is that, well, the stipend at IISc has improved dramatically in the last few years. So and you get sort of almost free hostel accommodation, almost free food and everything. So your expenses are actually going to be negligible on campus, right? So you might be able to save as much as you might save at a high-end job within Bangalore, since you're not paying for all the rent and all those things within campus. So it's not trivial. But the other big thing that's happened in the last couple of years is that the Prime Minister's Research Fellowship, PMRF, right? And that gives you something like 70K a month or so. And that's something to sneeze at, right? That's a pretty decent, I mean, even our postdocs don't get that much sometimes. So that's actually, I mean, a lot of students at CDS, right? So in fact, probably almost 30 or 20 or 30% of all students at CDS end up getting a PMRF fellowship, right? So we are one of the most, the competitive departments when it comes to students getting the fellowship, right? And that's sort of going to be supporting you at a much higher pay scale for the duration, right? So that's something to think about. Yes, we've talked about this. It's going to definitely help. Research degree is going to help with work or study abroad subsequently. The other question, because some students might be thinking, okay, I want to get into IISc some way or the other, right? So should I hedge my bets? Should I do coursework or research degree, right? Anyway, if some of you might have already applied for a course degree, so by now you already know if you're getting an offer or not. Right? But down the line, if you have your other sort of friends who are thinking between a course degree or research degree at IISc. So though we have probably more seats for course degrees, right? The competition for course degree is also much higher, right? So partly because students might be risk averse, they just want to do something more deterministic and leave, right? So in that sense, a research degree is actually arguably a bit easier to sort of apply to and get shortlisted for, but it's actually more sort of rewarding, right? It's almost like saying that, hey, I won the special of the day, right? And it's easier to get the special of the day as well. The special of the day being much more sort of nourishing, right, than just a course degree, right? So, I would say that at the end of the day, it shouldn't be about what's easier to get into. We should get into the program that's most appropriate for you. But again, it's not like research degree is much more harder to or easier to get to than a course degree. Right. So those are some of the sort of highlights that I had, and I'm happy to take other questions as well from the students. Let me quickly look at the chat window. I know Deepak has already been answering some of these. But if anyone has a question, Deepak, can they unmute and sort of ask a question or raise their hands and ask a question?
Yes, so I will request. I mean, you'll be available for some more time, right? So
yeah, or we can go towards the end also.
Yeah, I will just go through the admission process, because most of the question is from the admission process, right? So what is the admission process, right? So I'm going to talk about that. right? So after that, we can take more questions. Right, so. Okay. So thanks, Yogesh, for the nice introduction about what it means to do research and showing the path of both M.Tech research and PhD and the career opportunities that exist post PhD, post research, right? So there are a lot of opportunities that are available. So in addition to what Yogesh mentioned, right? So today, if you look at it, the opportunities for PhD graduates, right? So with research experience is tremendous, and not just in academia, right? So in research labs around the world and everywhere else, in startups, in many places, right? So research experience is highly valued. And so that is important for, important for several industry participants as well. So now let's get into the things that you are all worried about in some sense. So let me quickly briefly tell you about myself, right? So I wrote the joint entrance exam in 2007. And so at that time, it was all about like, oh, you write some entrance exam, get some rank, get in. Right? So that was the mode. So I understand and appreciate the concern that you all have about getting admission. Right, so but from 2007 to 2022, now 15 years, right? So I've been in academia in one form or the other. First as a student at IIT Madras doing my BTech, then later doing masters and PhD at MIT, and then being faculty at IISc after that. I can tell you that all this concern about getting in, right? So is somewhat the lesser part, right? So every time everybody says that just in 10th class they will say just 12th you finish, right? So that's it, right? So your life is all set. So once you finish 12th, people will say just somehow you get a gate score, that's it, get into IISc, life is all set. Then once you get in, right, so they will say no, all of that is okay, now is when your life starts, right? So somehow you get a job in some company, your life is all set, right? So then they will come and say no, somehow, right? So get that next promotion, your life is all set. So in other words, life is all about running behind these marks, right? So that we are all one milestones, and it's always like that. So what I have found out, and which I would like to share with all of you, is that think what is important for you, right? So what is it that you really like doing, and don't optimize for getting admission, right? So that should not be your goal, right? Getting admission is secondary. You should always do what you like doing, right? So that is what is best for you as well as everybody else, right? So involved in this process, that is what makes you happy, right? So always remember to look for and do things what makes you happy. Now, with that being said, let me go into how the research admission process is going to be. So today we have this general information session about what is CDS. So we saw that from both Shashi and Yogesh. Now tomorrow, from tomorrow and day after, right? So Wednesday and Thursday, we have individual lab PIs, the faculty talking to you about their lab, the research they do, and the kind of expertise they want you to possess when you join, right? So that is the next. That's the next 2 days, right? Agenda for the next 2 days, and I have sent you an email with the split of the time when each lab is going to talk about their work. So I would request you to go through the admission website, right? So of CDS, again, you know where it is, right? So we have shared it with you. Look through the brochure, understand which lab is what, get some idea, and attend these sessions to know more detail and ask your questions about the work that each individual lab does, right? So both M.Tech research and PhD, both of them require you to be associated with one lab, with one advisor, and it is important that you like what the work that they do before you join it, right? So that is very important. So the scheduled for tomorrow and day after is shown, is emailed to you already. Then the next is the first phase of the interview. So our interview has two phases, phase 1 and phase 2. So phase 1 of the interview is the online research aptitude test, which is scheduled to take place online on 10th of May, right? So that is next Tuesday at 3 p.m. Then the actual in-person oral interviews are scheduled from 23 to 27 May. So we got a total of 1,404 applications, right? So that was the total number of applications that we received. From that, about 604 or something like that is what we have shortlisted for this interview phase 1, right? So that is what it is. So this phase 1 online aptitude test is for 75 minutes. Right, so and it must be completed in one sitting. Right? So you log in at 3 o'clock, by 4:15, 75 minutes. So you must be done with it. And you need to create a free HackerEarth account to take this test. You must use the same email address that you have provided in the IISc admissions application. Right? So the email in which I have sent you the information for today, the same email. Right? So in that email, right, when we send the test information, there will be a practice test that you can do, but this practice test does not have questions from the test syllabus, right? So it's just a test for you to get familiar with the platform. Now you can take this practice test as many times as you want, and you should ensure that you know how to use this platform before the date of the test. Now, what will be asked in the test? The test per se will contain questions, multiple choice questions, 12 of them, and one programming question. No, sorry, three programming questions will be there. Right? 12 multiple choice questions and 3 programming questions will be there. You answer as many as you can. Right? So that's the idea. The multiple choice questions will be from the topics of combinatorics, probability, linear algebra, differential equations, plotting of functions, data structures, and algorithms. Right? So that is what the subject for the multiple choice questions will be. There will be a spread among all the topics, and you attempt how many ever you can. Right? So 12 MCQ questions will be there, and 3 programming questions will be there. So you please attempt as many as you can. Now, once the online aptitude test is over, right? So the programming test of the online aptitude test, you need to do programming in C, C++, or Java, right? So these are the options that are available. The HackerEarth interface will allow you to type the program, compile it, and run it on test cases. Right? So all is within the browser. We will provide you a basic code template for reading and writing the inputs and outputs for each problem. You should only focus on the actual code logic, right? So you should brush up things like if, else conditions, right? So for, while loops, and working with arrays and data structures, right? So this is what you must come with. You don't have to worry too much about the syntax, right? So and other things like that. Right? C, C++, Java, all of them have a similar if, else and loop conditions, right? So just brush up those parts, right? So you don't need to know like how to get the input output, all of that things we will be providing, right? So only these logic portion is what you must look for, right? So that is the programming part, right? So there will be MCQ and programming in the phase 1. Now, once the phase 1 online test is over, there will be a further selection, right? So from that, we will inform immediately the day within 24 hours after the test. We will be informing whoever has got selected through this programming and MCQ test, right? So basically the aptitude research, online research aptitude test. If you get selected, then you will attend the in-person interview that is held on campus at the IISc CDS department in the week of 23 to 27. You must have received a letter from the admissions office mentioning the date and time of the interview, right? So that date and time is valid for those who qualify in the phase 1, right? So phase 1 of that is the requirement as written in your call letter. So this is what is needed. So now in this admission interview, this is the oral interview. There will be questions on the basic topics and your lab preferences, right? So lab preferences. So before this, so after the phase 1 and before the phase 2, we will also share a application information form which you have to fill, and select your lab preferences in that, right? So this will be sent to you on the 11th of May, right? So and you have to fill it before you come for the in-person interview. So this will allow us to schedule you correctly with the correct panels, right? So that you can get interviewed by the lab faculty who you are interested in joining, right? So the interview will contain two parts again, right? So basic topics will be about mathematics, linear algebra, probability, then programming logic, right? So all this logic is what we will be testing you on. And advanced topic based on what you have selected, right? So which lab you have selected, based on that there will be a test, right? And in all of this interview, right? So we want to know how you think. We are not interested in what you can memorize. That is not what we are interested in, right? So we test how you think. So you must prepare the basics. We are looking for finding if you are good at picking up clues that we provide and thinking through problems, right? So basically this is a simulation of how a research problem will be solved, right? So and if you can pick up the clues and follow along the trajectory that we set out for you. The topics that we mentioned, right? So for the oral interview, the probability, linear algebra, programming, etc., are just a medium for us to talk, right? So we need to talk through some medium, and that medium is this topics, and we are more interested in gauging your thought process, right? So that's what is that is what will be tested over here. Right, so I know there are several YouTube videos that are doing rounds on how CDS interview is conducted. Most of that is not correct, right? So we don't, when you come, we don't ask you describe about yourself. All those questions are not there. We have your application information form, right? We are not going to ask you about all of those things. We are interested in finding out if you can pick up clues, solve problems, and think. Right? So whoever has the ability to think will most likely get selected, right? So that's the entire interview process. So this is how you should prepare for the interviews and how you should answer questions in the interview for in that particular format. Now, what are some resources, right? So again, I know there are a lot of people on YouTube talking about random things that this is what you must prepare, right? So on Quora and other places I've seen. So we are providing you authentic information, right? So if at all you want to use YouTube channels and other things, right? So you can look at the 3 blue 1 brown videos, Grant Sanderson's videos on calculus, linear algebra, probability. So it's like a 3-part or 4-part series about all of these concepts. So it's good to brush up the basics from that. And for programming, computational thinking, right? So how to think through loops, how to think through structures, etc. The first few lectures of the Introduction to Computational Thinking CS50 lectures, right? So by Harvard. This is some good resource for you to start thinking, right? So it doesn't mean if you study all these things you will get you will ace the interview. It doesn't mean that, but if you want some guidance on where to start from, right? So this is where it's a good place to get your basics right? So this is some resource that you can try to use. Okay. So that is what we will look at, right? So again, remember, right? So the dates, right? So of the interview are as it is, right? So tomorrow and day after we have the sessions, lab-wise sessions, and so look at the brochure, understand which labs you want to hear more about, and you can look into that. Okay. So this is all I want to tell you. Now we will take questions, right? So that are there. Okay. So
yeah. Hello, sir. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I am from IISc Mohali. I will complete my BSMS. So the convocation is on 26th, and my interview is also on 26th. So is it possible that it can be done before that? Is it flexible? Is what I wanted to ask.
Yeah, so after you finish the online aptitude test, right? So after you finish that test, and if you get selected for the phase 2 of the interview, at that time you can send me an email and we will see what is possible. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Good evening, sir. I have a question.
Can you audible? Sir, how to access the recordings of these videos?
Okay, Akanksha, you can go ahead. Akanksha Dwivedi.
Am I audible?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, sir, Yogesh sir explained year-wise view of PhD for a BTech student. So, apart from the courses, can you give a brief? Like, we can go back to the slide and brief with the MTech applicants. What will be the expectation for the 4 years or 5 years duration for the MTech applicants?
So it will be same, Akanksha. That's what I mentioned in the chat also, right? So it will be same as that as of a BTech. Only difference is that you do fewer courses. And so since you do fewer courses, that time requirement gets shortened by 1 year, right? So that's what it is.
Okay, so it's only just the courses.
Yeah, only the course load is different. You don't have to do as many courses as a direct BTech would do.
Oh, okay, got it. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, there was another question about the CFTI. So as per the admission guidelines, right? So CFTI students are eligible only for direct PhD, right? So you need to have a gate score to get admitted to the M.Tech program if you just have a BTech, right? So that's what it is. Right. So phase 1, like within 24 hours of the phase 1, we will tell you, right? So whether you are selected for the phase 2 interview or not. Okay.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, actually, I had both gate score and CFTI qualified. So when I applied, the mode of entry it came as CFTI.
Ask about the eligibility criteria and questions. Please send an email to the admissions, right? So they will guide you with the correct admissions eligibility requirements. Okay.
Sir, am I audible?
Yes.
Sir, where can we access the recording of these meetings?
Yeah, once the recordings are posted online, I will send you an email to the registered email addresses.
Thank you, sir.
Hello.
Yes.
Sir, I have a question. Sir, when we are writing the online test, all the code has to be written in such a way that all the test cases have to be passed, or even if some test cases are passing, that is also like fine.
So your goal should be to have everything pass, but anything less than that will get accordingly graded.
So you will get partial marks for passing some of the test cases, right? You will know that as well, right? It will tell you how many you're getting passed and how many you're scoring.
Okay, and if we can get the questions of the previous years, like the online tests, what kind of programming questions you have asked, can we get those questions?
So there is a sample question paper on the website. You can take a look at that.
Okay, and if the person is having like already 7 years of industry experience, we also have to go through this test.
Yes.
So then it should be easier for you, right? You're at an advantage, right? All the more reason.
No, the thing is, like after a long gap, it's like very difficult to get into that competitive like time limit and all. So like that, I asked actually.
The PhD is also going to be equally difficult or a master's, right? So you're getting you prepped for that.
Okay, fine.
So there's a raised hand from Sumit.
Yes, Sumit, go ahead. Yeah.
So I already asked, forgot to put down the hand.
Okay. Okay. Yes. Yes, Shiva Agarwal, you go ahead.
Sir, so actually I want to ask, sir, can you share some previous year questions so that we can practice this test?
So a sample question paper is indeed available on our website, right? So you can go ahead and look at that.
Sir, I just wanted to ask for the programming questions, will the difficulty be like the questions will be really basic level to just test out whether we know coding or not? Or will they be on the level of like proper competitive coding like it is already there on the HackerF platform?
So it should be at the level of having taken a single undergraduate course in programming and data structures, right? So if you've done a sort of programming structures algorithms course properly, and you are able to sort of remember all the concepts and are able to apply it, you should be okay.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Anirudh, you had a question?
Yes, sir.
Satvik, you had a question? Okay, Shreyas Dixit.
Hello, sir. So I have this question that in the aptitude test, how is the weightage divided between maths and programming? Because I'm more banking on the math side of the test rather than programming.
So there's going to be a distribution between the various syllabus topics that have been listed, right? So you got everything from linear algebra, probability statistics, combinatorics, programming, data structures. So there'll be a distribution across all of them. It's not going to be sort of skewed in one way or the other.
Okay.
Selvam?
Yeah. Yes, sir, I'm Selvam here. Yes, sir.
Go on.
Sir, I want to ask regarding that the brochure you just mentioned regarding some of the labs and available vacancy there. Some professors may take 3 to 4 scholars there. I think is it true or how is the selection? I don't know, sir. Please.
Well, what you need to do is the knowledge of the number of students. If you can tell us that, we can answer that question.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
Yeah, really.
Actually, I'm interested in some of the labs. Then I found some of the labs are interested.
If you are interested, you apply, right? So it shouldn't matter.
Yeah.
How
Yes,
many
sir.
seats are there? You only need one, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. But it is very strictly that mentioned that some professors may need 3 to 4
What I'm
students.
telling you from the beginning, right? So when I started I said, you should do what you like. You should not optimize for anything else. You should only optimize for your happiness, right?
Okay,
So
okay, sir.
getting admission is not the end of anything, right? So every stage people will tell you that, okay, you just do this, everything will be set in life.
Yes, excellent.
So,
thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, as we know, there are only 20 seats in this course. So how many will be called for the interview process, second round?
How did you get to the know that it was only 20 seats?
Yeah. So I think I read somewhere that there are 20 seats in M.Tech.
Yeah, so
and
another
MS.
thing, right? Don't trust anything other than what we tell you on YouTube, Quora, anywhere else, right? So Facebook, Twitter, please don't trust any of those information, right? So yeah. Okay.
Like how many seats are there total? Is it fixed or it varies?
If you are good and right, so you will get an admission. Basically, that's pretty much it.
So there are enough seats for good candidates. Let me put it this way. Typically, it's more a question of us not being able to find good enough candidates rather than us having too many good candidates and not being able to fill them, right? So if we find good candidates, we can go and talk to the institute and ask to accommodate more number of students, right? So we do have flexibility in that, right? So it's not a hard number, it is a soft number, right? But the question is, are you good enough, right? That's really the question we ask, right? Everything else is secondary.
Yeah. And the question that you must ask is, do I enjoy doing this, right? So is this right for me? And once you take a decision, right, so that this is right for you, must stick to that decision, right? So because all trajectories in life, right, so ultimately you can be happy. So that's what is important, right? So
maybe to re-emphasize one point that Deepak mentioned earlier on, sort of what he just mentioned right now, right? So please go through the brochure carefully and choose the labs carefully. So the question asked earlier on as well, because once you sort of choose the lab, right, the interview questions, at least the oral interview questions, are going to be based on the topics relevant to that particular lab, right? So in a sense, you are actually interviewing for a subset of the labs, right, rather than the department as a whole, right? And this is also going to sort of affect the labs you can join if you get an admit, right? If you get an admit, it's not like getting an admit to the department as a whole, right? So you have a limited choice of labs that you will be able to join. So carefully go through the lab choices, carefully go through the syllabus topics for the lab choices during the interview time, and prepare for those syllabus topics. Right? And these can very well be sort of subset of subjects that you've taken in your undergraduate or things that you've done subsequent to that as well.
Hello.
Yeah, I think in the list wise, Darshit Gandhi, you had a hands raised.
Hello.
Yeah, go on, Darshit. Yeah.
Yes, good evening, sir. Like, I want to ask that for the interviews, will it be fine if we perform, like, if we prepare good for the basic topics and like, or it is necessary to like be fluent in all the advanced topic that we have selected for the labs?
For the oral interview, you should be conversant with the advanced topic as well. Whatever is listed for that lab, you should be additionally prepared for that also. It can't just be the basic topic. We can ask you questions on the basics as well, but we'll more spend time on the advanced topics relevant to each lab.
Yeah, one of the advanced topics, right? So it's not like you need to know everything. Then you can directly get a PhD. But you want to do a PhD after that. So it's just one of that. And again, right? I'm telling you, we are only look for how you think, right? So memorizing something or coming and repeating it is not what we're looking for, right? So how you are thinking and are you able to logically explain whatever you are thinking, right? So that's what matters.
Okay, so thank you so much.
Yeah.
Hello.
Ashok.
Multiple topics, or do we have to select one single?
So during the interview, right? So interview, what you need to do is we will ask you, right? So during the interview, what topic have you come prepared for, and we will take it from there. So you can select one topic at that time of the interview.
No, sir, I was asking for like interviews. Can we select multiple labs or just a single lab only?
No, you can select up to 3 labs, right? So you must rank order up to 3 labs that you want to join.
Okay, sir.
Okay. Yeah.
Ashok, Ratnudeep, Kushbu.
Hello.
Sir,
Go on, Kushbu.
sir, how long the interview will last? Because like from now onwards, trains are very booked. So I just wanted to know.
So it will be the CDS interview will be on the slot that is mentioned on your call letter, right? So that's where the CDS interview will be.
Sure. But let me also add a cautionary tale. Sometimes the interviews do run late, right? So what I would suggest is assume that even though the call letter might say 2 to 5 p.m., right? Sometimes it even runs till 7 p.m. and so on, right? So I would say give at least an extra 3 to 4 hours buffer, right? For potentially the interviews to run along, right? So if you don't book tickets, assuming it will sharp stop at 5 p.m., right? It's better to give yourself a bit more extra. Otherwise, you'll be stressed out also. We've had students who are more worried about missing their train rather than doing well in the interviews. You don't want to be in that boat.
And account for Bangalore traffic, right? to reach the railway station or airport or bus stand, wherever it is, right? So,
Shayan Kumar.
Yes, sir. Good evening, sir. Actually, I am looking for the computer vision, but there are 2 labs for it, BCL and BAL. Which ones will be?
So you can attend the information session from both the labs. So it is on Thursday, and you can then make a call based on that. Okay.
Yes, sir. Okay, sir.
Yeah.
Mahesh Kumar.
Sir, am I audible, sir?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. So let's say, sir, I choose 3 labs. So on interview, do I have to give 3 separate interviews or only a single interview?
1 interview only.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Isha Pali.
Good. Sir, is it possible to get accommodation at the campus?
No. Unfortunately, no. Right. So we barely have accommodation for our existing students. So at admissions week, we are going to have a lot of students coming in. So the campus cannot provide accommodation, but there are a lot of good sort of clean but reasonably affordable hotels around IISc, because IISc has there's also Ramaya College right next door. So there's a lot of options that are available, right? So I would suggest that you look. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure. Purnima?
Good evening, sir.
Yeah, go on, Purnima. Purnima?
So, may I? Yeah. Am I audible?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. So I wanted to know for the people who have gone through CFTI, you have mentioned that to get into the MS research, they would need the GATE score. So is it like a valid GATE score? It's like they should qualify the GATE.
So if you've been called for interview, right, some of those eligibility criteria are very likely already met, right? So if you're from a CFTI with greater than 8.0 CGPA, you don't need a GATE score.
No, for M.Tech research.
So M.Tech research and PhD have the same admissions process. There is no difference.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Sure. So Abhishek Verma?
Yes, sir. So am I audible, sir?
Yeah, go on.
Hello?
Yes, go on, Abhishek.
Yes, sir. Sir, my question was that, sir, that I have, sir, already applied for M.Tech program in IISc, and sir, I have also given interview for CDS department. And sir, my interview went good, sir. And sir, now, but seeing the presentations by all the professors, sir, I am more inclined towards this M.Tech research program. Sir, so wouldn't it be a problem that if I attend this program, the professors would say that why have you then given M.Tech course?
So, these two are treated independently. You can very well get an offer from M.Tech CDS course program, and you could very well get an offer from M.Tech research or PhD from CDS simultaneously, and you will have a choice of picking one or the other. Right?
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yeah, but I think Yogesh, one is on the COAP and the other might not be on the COAP, right?
The offer process is different, right? Yeah. But these are independent offers. These are unrelated offers. We won't hold it against you if you get an offer from both, right? So, yeah. Yasir Fahim?
Okay, sir. I will come, sir.
Sure.
Yeah, yes, sir. Good evening, sir. Sir, actually, I have a question that I am M.Tech final semester student. So, is M.Tech final semester student are eligible for this year PhD in IISc?
So, finish your academic requirements by July 31st, you should.
Yes, sir. Actually, my this final semester is end in June on itself. Yes.
Right. So the IISc requires that you finish all your academic requirements by the July 31st, right?
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So the admissions website has precise language. So I'd encourage you to look at it. They've got FAQs related to this because this is common across entire IISc. So do take a look at it. It will tell you exactly what the requirement is. Great. Kakumanu.
Yeah. Yeah, sir. You can call me Sitaram.
Go on ahead.
Yeah, sir. Actually, I have applied for other department too. Haven't received call letter from the department yet. Will I be receiving it? Have you sent the call letters for all the departments or anything are kept hold?
My understanding is that the call letters for all research programs have gone. Right? You may want to check the admissions office, but as far as I know, all the call letters have gone out. So if you haven't received it, it's likely that the best thing is to check the portal. Right? If it's not there in the portal, very likely that you have not been shortlisted.
Okay, sir. And the small thing, what will be the syllabus for the written test on this May 10?
Please look at the brochure. All the details about the written test, everything is available in the brochure as well as the website. In both places, we have mentioned it. You can please look there.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Last couple of questions, right? So, and we will close in 5 minutes, right? So
Satvik, do you have a question?
Yes, sir. Thank you. First of all, sir, is there any is there same expectations from CS background undergrads and other background undergrads?
Expectation in what?
In interviews, the expectation in performance in the algorithmic thinking. Yeah.
So for the written test, it will be as per the syllabus. The written set is much more syllabus. Written test syllabus is more broader, right? So there we expect all students to have some degree of math and sort of programming, data structures foundations, right? But that's going to be much more at the sort of introductory level, the basic undergraduate level. But for the interviews, the shortlist for the interviews, there you should be preparing for specific labs, right? So if the lab expects you to have CS or a EC kind of background, you should have preparation in that, right, for the interview.
Okay, thank you.
Gautam? Go on, Gautam. You're not audible. So Purnima, did you have another question? Or I don't know if you asked earlier. So Purnima, you're not audible. Geetika Singh?
Yeah, hi sir. I have another question. Is there any provision for joint PhD like IISc plus any other foreign university?
Right. I think I answered it on the chat window. So currently IISc only has one joint PhD program with University of Melbourne that is active. But you can't be considered for that at the time of admissions. Typically you would join a lab and after spending 1 year, you can apply for such a program from within IISc. But there's no guarantee that you'll get it. So that's just a option that we give for students who A, do well, and B, have mutual interest between their advisor and the remote advisor. Sana?
Yeah, so you mentioned the fact that the PhD students have the option of converting it into a M.Tech degree, but do M.Tech students, RA students have the option of changing it to a PhD degree?
Yes, you do have that option. So typically you have that option at 2 points. So one by a first year of your master's, you have the option of doing that. The second at the time of submitting the thesis. Right? But at that point, you will be evaluated based on both your CGPA as well as your research progress and so on. So there is an internal review process for you to upgrade to a PhD from an M.Tech, right? And so that's something to keep in mind. It's not an automatic thing. It's based on your performance, both academically and research-wise.
Thank you, sir.
Sure. Purnima, do we have? Are you audible now? Okay. Any other questions before we wrap up?
Okay, thank you everybody for attending the information session. Please do attend the lab specific information sessions tomorrow and the day after at the appropriate times. You can join and learn more about that, ask questions to the faculty and make the right choice, right? So this is what I want to tell you all. Okay, take care, good luck. Hope to see you all at CDS IISc very soon. Bye.
Bye-bye.